Yeah, no problem.
I actually remembered to record. It'll just take me 1 sec.
Yeah, no problem.
I wrote down Jess chat about her life path choices. I'm actually
Mm-hmm.
just gonna leave it that way. And when it
Yeah.
comes to your last name, how do I say your last name?
Last name's Noftel.
Noftel?
Yep.
Okay. That's your new last name, right?
It is, yeah.
Congratulations. I haven't even talked to you
Thank
since then.
you. Yeah.
So if you want to, you can share it out at the same time. You don't have to. It's just completely up to you.
Yep.
And we are live. So welcome. Thank you so much
Th-
for coming on.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So I will get you to just introduce yourself if you want to, and just kind of like a little bit of background, whatever you want.
Sure. My name's Jessica Noftel. I usually just go by Jess. I'm 33. I live in Bedford, Nova Scotia. I'm from Tantallon.
Mhm.
Um, I am a yoga practitioner. I teach yoga. I'm also almost a registered nurse.
Wow.
Um, Yoga has, I feel like, impacted or touched like every area of my life.
Mhm.
And it's sort of something that I use for a multitude of different reasons. Um, I love hanging outside with my dog. I also have 2 cats. I love animals. I love music. Um, yeah, I love playing sports. I love hockey. Anything active.
So, okay, awesome. Thank you for introducing yourself. I never know what's gonna
Problem.
I don't know what's gonna happen here. I just wing it. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna introduce myself too. So my name is Robin and I own a business called Robin's Healing. Um, and I am currently doing my 300-hour yoga training so that I will have my 500 hours. Yay.
Yay.
And I kind of wanted today to talk about, I mean, I do more things than yoga, but I kind of wanted to talk to you because you also do yoga. You also did a psychology degree.
I did.
Yeah, because we met up in organizational
Yeah.
behavior, maybe something like that.
Yeah. I think we were in a couple at the end there at St. Mary's. There was definitely an organizational behavior, and we were in another one, and it was actually kind of cool. Um, I can't for the life of me remember like what it
That's
was. It
okay.
wasn't positive. It wasn't positive psychology, but it was like something
Like that.
like that. And
Yeah.
we were. Do you remember going outside with like an old short guy with white hair and doing some kind of like mapping stuff or like orientation to like the land?
Oh, right. Yeah, I think that was organizational behavior.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it was interesting. So yeah, so we
Mm-hmm.
could we kind of have a similar path, right? Like I just think that
Yeah.
people come across your path. You also lived across the street from me
Yeah,
in
we were neighbors.
yeah, which is funny. So it's interesting
Yeah.
how we cross paths with people. I find like you
Uh-huh.
your neighbors and then you come across each other in university and then both have like that yoga training, but then I also taught you your Reiki level 1.
Yes. And you did, and years before you taught me Reiki level 1, you did Reiki treatments on me. And it actually really helped. I
Good.
was going through like a really intense like period of healing and of stuff around that time, and yeah, it was very beneficial for me.
Awesome. So yeah, I feel like you've gone through like a lot. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so like talking about yoga specifically, because today I wanted it to be more about like motivation to like
Mm-hmm.
get people to like, I don't know, just like move their bodies, but
Yep.
also like talking about the healing journey of like
Mm-hmm.
doing the training or just like getting on the mat, or like why we don't get on the mat, or why we say we
Mm-hmm.
can't do yoga. Because I personally hear people say this all the time, and it happens to me too. It's just like, oh, like I can't do yoga, like it's too hard, but they've never done it before. Or like, no,
Yeah.
my body won't let me do that or something. And it's like they don't even understand that yoga to me essentially is breath
Yeah.
and breathing and like
Mm-hmm.
not meditation, but it can be a form of meditation.
Mm-hmm.
And so I find it interesting when people say that they can't do it. Does that happen to you too?
Yeah, it definitely does. And it's like if you have a body, you can do yoga.
Right.
Like yeah, there's no like yoga body or and that's what kind of drew me to yoga, or maybe more so like made me fall in love with yoga, is that like everyone's practice is different, and like I really notice it when I teach. So like let's say that like I'm teaching a class
Mm-hmm.
and I bring everyone into tree pose. Let's say there's 20 people in the class and they're all coming into their tree pose. Like you could look around the room and like there's 20 different tree poses.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all like not one of them is right and not one of them is wrong.
I like that.
And like that's the beauty of yoga. And it's like you get to a point where you're like, well, you should be listening to your body and kind of like letting it guide you to like the different depths of the pose, and every day is different too. So like some days there's going to be certain things that are available in your body, certain like space, and other days, even like the very next day, completely different, right? And like that's just, I think, the nature of like human physiology
Mm-hmm.
and our energy levels too. Like sometimes we're tired, sometimes we're sore, it's kind of yoga has kind of turned into a really nice form of like non-attachment practice for me as well.
Mm-hmm.
And like learning to like let go and like not judge those moments of like, oh, I can't do this, say, for example, because you had brought that up before.
Yep.
But it's interesting because I think that a lot of people start yoga because they want to move, or like they want to gain mobility or like flexibility, or they've heard it's a good workout. Like they have this list of like physical things as to like why they start a yoga practice.
Yeah.
But then once they start practicing, that's not the reason why they keep practicing. It's actually, I think, shifts to much more of like a healing or even like spiritual type of motivation. But yeah, as you sort of like get in the routine of like practicing it, like it obviously is physical, like it does become, you know, like I don't want to say like a workout, like there are physical benefits to it, but you do it because of the way that it makes you feel,
Mm.
like almost like in your mind more so, I find. And like
I
I've
like
had
I like that.
a lot of students tell me that, like they're like, "Oh, I heard it was, I came for the workout, but now that but I stayed for like the mental, like the inner peace." And I'm like, "Yeah, exactly."
What yoga
I did
classes?
training. I like technically like I teach like hatha yoga, or I was certified in hatha yoga, which can like also be translated into like hatha vinyasa, but hatha basically just means like linking breath and movement. I did my yoga teacher training at Tay's Therapeutic Approach Yoga Studio
Mhm.
on Quinpool Road, and yeah, they take a very therapeutic approach to their yoga, which I really like.
And
Um,
you did 200, or have
I
you?
did 200 hours.
Okay.
Yeah.
And will you do
Yeah.
more, do you think?
I have been wanting to do more since since I started, like since I did the 200 hours, I've just been like, I've had a really few like busy years, but I want to definitely do my 500 hours at some point here in the next couple of years.
Awesome.
For
I feel like
sure.
you should, because I feel like every training you do, just it keeps adding on. Like I know people that have
Yeah.
done like 20 trainings, like 200 hours.
Yeah.
And a lot of people will travel and meet new people and stuff. I know it
Hmm.
can become a little costly and stuff, but
That's what I want to do. I'd love to travel and do like a retreat
mm,
for like my training and like go somewhere new. And there's definitely something that you would get out of it if you did it 20 different times. Like it's never
mhm,
going to be the same.
yeah.
And even like I would even suggest for people to, even if you just want to deepen your own yoga practice, like do your teacher training. Like that is like one of
Mhm.
the best ways that you can deepen your practice is by doing the training.
Yeah.
And it was also better, um, like healing, and then it was better than like the decade of therapy that I had done, like leading up until that point. I did like a month long, 30-day intensive 200-hour program. And like I felt like that I had healed more in that month than I had in like the 10 years leading up to that point.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I'm asking, Eunice is watching and she said, hey, because I was mentioning to people, just making sure they can see us and they're watching. Because
Hmm.
I like these to be interactive too, right? Because we can structure it
Yeah.
however we want to. But I'm trying to type right now, which I might as well just ask a question, then they can they can type. But I was going to ask Eunice if she or anyone that's watching, if you already do yoga, and if so, what type of yoga do you do? And how often do you do it? Because I think like with yoga, the more you practice, the better you get at it. But where
Yes.
we were just talking about, like, there's nowhere to go with it. Like, there's no goal. I don't find there's a goal
Hmm.
with it. It's like the only place you're going is into your heart or like
Hmm.
into yourself. Like, you're just
Hmm.
deepening your connection to higher source or creator, whatever it is. Right. So,
Yeah.
I feel like people have this weird mindset of yoga that it's like I have to get to it, like get to the finish line, where it's like
Yeah.
the finish line is never ending and it's just learning how to
Yeah.
like get a deeper sense of self, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I definitely got caught in that pattern before of like, oh, I want to like get here and like these are my goals, like I want to get into this pose, and like I found for me that it ended up like almost like becoming more of like a barrier
Yep.
and like a frustration, and like
Mhm.
once I was able to like let that go, like let the agenda go,
Yep.
is like when my practice like really like thrived. And like that's like why I practice yoga now, because like I do a lot of other like physical things that like involve those types of like goals and
Mhm.
pursuits and pushing, and it's like I don't need that in my yoga practice. Like I need the opposite of that in my yoga practice. I need as much um like holding space for myself and just like allowing to see like what shows up and really like connecting to that source energy and just like
Mhm.
showing up and being and getting out of my own head of like these, you know, like
Pressure,
yeah, pressure, expectations,
negative thinking,
hmm
yeah, and
judgments, attachments, like you name
tension
it.
tension in your body that just needs to be
Hmm.
released, because when we
Yeah.
breathe when we breathe, every time we let go and we really like breathe in, like that's a sense of release, you know? So I find like
Yes.
energies, when we do yoga, energy is always just moving out of the body. And that's why you feel better. And we kind of go to that logical brain of like, oh, we're doing a physical exercise. But in all honesty,
Hmm.
it's very much like an energetic release that's happening. And like the more
Yeah.
you can involve your body in the practice, like engage your body to be a part of the breath, like yes, you're going to get health benefits for sure, but to me it really is just like a release technique.
Exactly. And like you said, like connecting, like yoga means union, and
Mhm.
it's connecting like, you know, your physical, mental, spiritual breath to everything, you know?
I love it.
Um,
Eunice just said she doesn't do yoga, but she would love to learn it, which is very cool. I had a feeling we would have people on here that just don't do it, but they're um,
mhm.
getting motivated and inspired to begin.
Yes.
For me anyway, on my page, because I know that how healthy you feel after you do these practices.
Yes.
And I even need the motivation because I go through stages where I will do like 30 days of yoga or 40 days of
Mhm.
yoga consistently every day, and I feel amazing. And then I'm like,
Mhm.
yeah, okay, I've done enough. And then I get out of the pattern. And then I'm like, oh, I
Mhm.
have to get back to my mat. I have to get back to my mat. But it's like I can't
Mhm.
get myself there. And
Mhm.
then I'll
I
tell
think
my yeah. And then I'll tell myself like, oh, it's okay to go through stages. But then it's
it
like,
is
is
okay.
this an excuse or is this me just like, you know?
Yeah, it's definitely like hard to find the line there, but like I do think that there's like a little bit of like both. Like
Mhm.
sometimes you do need to not have it be so rigid. It's like the same if you're trying to like cultivate a practice of like meditation. It's like to an extent, like you want to set up that appointment with yourself to sit or whatever, like go to your mat and like you want to show up for it, but you don't want it to become so rigid that you end up hating it or just don't do it altogether. You know what I mean? Like there has to be
Yes.
like a little bit of flexibility. And I think that yoga is like I didn't realize it, but a lot of people find it daunting and intimidating to start yoga. And they think it looks complicated and
Yeah.
they think that you have to be able to like do certain things in order to start. And um, honestly, there are a million different modifications. And like I said before, like everyone might be in a certain pose, let's say like a triangle pose or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone's going to be doing a different version of their triangle pose. So, like, you're never like right or wrong. Like, you're never in the wrong. Like, as a teacher, you're going around the room, there might be certain positions that might be a little maybe more like unsafe or like you could help some so that their alignment is better,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not nobody's ever doing anything that's wrong.
I love that. And one thing I find like the only thing that's wrong is when you're pushing yourself
Mhm.
to do something that's not right for you. So I
Mhm.
always say like to start like well our teacher anyway when I was learning we had a 70% rule which was like never push yourself past the 70% mark. So basically the second
Mhm.
you feel anything
Mhm.
that means you're doing something because you're feeling
Yeah.
something and then you don't ever
Yeah.
like try to push yourself past that. And as you continue to grow then you can start to like
Mhm.
you're going to notice that that point is different, like oh I'm not as sore when I go to do this or I don't feel that one as much maybe, and then you can just push a little bit to a feeling. Does that make
Yes.
sense?
Another really good like point to go along with that or like pointer
Mm-hmm.
is if you get yourself into a position or a posture and you can't breathe, like the moment you can't get your full breath,
Yeah,
you've gone too far.
right.
You need to be able to get your full breath in and out in the posture. And if you're not, you need to like ease off and back off to the point where you can get your full breath in and out.
Right. So when you first started, like, because Nancy Anderson said, I would love to learn how to do yoga. I feel like people are just right there. Like they're so close
Yeah.
to starting. But I think sometimes it's about getting the inspiration. I guess that's what I'm getting is like a nudge or
Hmm.
something being like, oh, I watched this podcast for a reason. Maybe this was like my pull to at least like
Hmm.
join a class. But when you
Hmm.
first started, did you like join like a beginner group? Or what how did you start?
I stumbled upon yoga when I was around 24 years old. And I was living downtown at the time, and I was doing a lot of I was doing like marathon running.
Mm-hmm.
And I started going, my friends would go to like hot yoga,
Mm-hmm.
and I would walk by a hot yoga studio. It was Moksha at the time on Dresden Row.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, I could try that. Like, it seems like, like I felt like I needed more like stretching and cooling down in my body
Yep.
from all the running.
Mm-hmm.
So I just sort of like tried it on a whim and ended up like really liking it.
Mm-hmm.
And then and it's funny because and I sort of got addicted to the hot yoga there for like about a year.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because now like I can't practice hot yoga. Like I might go to like one hot yoga class per year, and it would have to be like in the dead of winter. Like I find I need to practice at room temperature now. It's just like too warm and yeah, not restorative enough for me now. Like I sort of was in like a bit of an unhealthy mindset, I think, when I started yoga, and it was all about like ways that I could push my body, and now it's more of like healing.
Yeah.
So I very much had an approach when I started of like going in and like very competitive, and like I want to get into this pose and like
Mm-hmm.
hold it for longer than my neighbor, and like it
Yep.
was how far can I push my body, like it's a very different mindset now.
I
So
love
like
that.
I've
So it's like
definitely,
in a way, you've matured enough through your
yeah.
practice, not just like, but just like age
Hmm.
wise too, and like the judgment of
Yeah.
others and your ego and all that
Yeah.
stuff. It sounds like now you're like
Yes.
so advanced spiritually that you realize what it's really about. But starting off,
Yeah.
sounds like maybe it was like weight loss or like getting better at like
Yeah.
pushing yourself and health and all that stuff.
Yes, exactly. And I
Um,
find yoga can be a really good, like for me, like when I want to um like deepen my practice of meditation, but for whatever reason, like sometimes I feel like I just can't sit.
mhm.
And like I sometimes like I can and I do, and I do practice like regular meditation, but on the days where like it's just not happening for me, like yoga is a great way. Sometimes I just like opt to do yoga, and it's more of like a moving meditation for me. Or even if I do like yin yoga, which is like much more slowed down, and then I find it really like helps me connect to my practice of meditation, like even just like allowing myself like a little bit of movement,
Yeah.
um, can be really helpful. So I feel like they kind of go hand in hand, or they can.
And the more tools you have, like I just see like yoga as like one more tool for me anyway. Like I've become
Hmm.
addicted to tools, and now
Hmm.
I'm advancing in my spiritual journey, and I'm becoming a coach and really like a mentor for people because
Hmm.
like I've taken so many things, and it sounds like you're finishing nursing. So like you're like a tool junkie too,
Hmm.
because we never stop
Yeah.
learning. But now I'm kind of like, okay, I feel like I have enough like
Yeah.
knowledge that I can start really like supporting other people doing all the same things that I've already done.
Yeah.
Um, because I want to mention this because yoga to me is just like one more thing. And if you have other things like your Reiki training, or for me, I have my Akashic Records training, and a lot of people don't know what that is, but it's just a space that we go into that we can really identify with our past, present, and future. So I do
Hmm.
that for other people, but when I do it for myself, we can go into light language, which is almost like speaking in tongue. And
Hmm.
it's like, and it's this powerful like activation almost. But when I'm doing my own practice and going into my own energy, it's like mind blowing. I want to videotape it because I'm like, this is so
Hmm.
weird. I want other people to see, but there's this like really cool thing I feel like you can do when you make your or create your own home practice is like, oh, I
Mm-hmm.
can combine like Reiki and crystals
Yeah.
and sound
Yeah.
healing, and there's no
Yeah.
structure. It's just like letting everything go and flow. And I
Yes.
mean, it's amazing.
That is one of the beauties about home practice. And that's like what I'm addicted to now at this point. And if I find like if I do sometimes like get in a rut, like when you were talking about like being away from your mat for a bit and just being like, I just need to get on there.
Yep.
That's when I will go to a class. That's what I'm like, okay, just take yourself to a class. You don't have to think about it. Someone else will lead you, someone else will guide you. And then I get there and like it's lovely. Don't get me wrong. But then when I'm leaving, I'm like, oh, okay, great. Can't wait to go home. And like the next day we'll like get into like my practice and the way that I want to do it. And I often do use, same as you, like I'll put like a sound bath on in the background and like have my crystals around and like light candles and like in my Shavasana or some of the resting poses, like be doing Reiki on myself. Like it does become very much like a melding pot of the tools, like you said.
Of loveliness.
Yeah, of just like pure bliss.
So Shavasana is my favorite position.
Me too. Me too.
So for people that are listening that have know nothing about yoga, but they still kind of have that like urge,
Yeah.
but still
Yeah.
resistance, like what is Shavasana?
So Shavasana is, it's translated, it is corpse pose, and it's a resting pose. It in yin yoga it's rebound pose, which is just again like resting. So traditionally, Shavasana is the pose that you could either start with, but I guess more so traditionally end a yoga practice in. And it can't like it when I teach, I tell people to take whatever position feels most comfortable for them. Um, if it's not laying flat on your back, then you don't have to. But for most, it's you're just laying flat on your back on your yoga mat with as much or as little space between your feet and your legs. The legs are extended, the arms are extended down by your sides. You don't have to, but like it is, I find it can be nice to like flip your palms so that your palms are facing up or like open to the energy in the room. Your shoulders are relaxed and like you're literally, you can just like feel the mat beneath the back of your head and like down your spine. Your shoulders are supported, your hips, your legs, and you're not really holding any like tension in your body. Like you're not holding your feet up in a straight position. You're just like letting your feet hang and fall. Like I don't want to say like you're just getting ready to like go to sleep there on the mat, but like you're relaxed, you're just letting go.
Mm.
And you just want to like breathe into the position. Um I like to close my eyes as well when I'm in Shavasana,
I
but
always find I'm a crier. So,
yeah.
and at first, that's what I had a hard time with in going to classes. Because, like, for me,
Yeah.
safety, I've had a lot of trauma. And that's actually what
Mm-hmm.
attracted me to yoga is I actually met this
Yeah.
girl who is going to be on my podcast next Friday, which is amazing. She has had PTSD because she went to the war, and
Yeah.
like for females to go to war and all that stuff and is just a big thing in general
Mm-hmm.
anyway, but she had a
Yeah.
really hard time with some of the males, like when she
Mm-hmm.
said she had like some PTSD and stuff, like she really needed,
Yeah.
she came back and she needed a lot of love,
Yeah.
nurturing. So
Yeah.
she went to the States and did like yoga training for trauma, which was
Yeah.
of course helping her. And she was
Yeah.
working at like a yoga boutique on Quimple Road. And I was working at a coffee shop at the time, like down on like Shabukto. And something was telling me like I needed to go to that store. So I walked to the store and there's this like girl behind the desk and I just had chills all over me. And she did Reiki training, or not Reiki training, but Reiki sessions, I guess. And I didn't know what Reiki
Mm-hmm.
was either, but there was something like kind of magical about her. And
Mm-hmm.
she kind of told me a bit about her story, and she felt the same thing, like we were supposed to meet.
Yeah.
And it was a very weird thing, but I was like, I feel like I need to do yoga training for trauma because of
Hmm.
my own trauma. And she
Hmm.
kind of inspired me. And then I
Yeah.
was like, I feel like I need to get a Reiki session with her. And I went
Hmm.
to a psychic, and she's like, you're going to become a Reiki master. And anyway, I didn't end up going to her for the Reiki session, but I went into my Reiki training, and that really helped me
Hmm.
spiritually and just kind of like, I guess, to activate some of those tools that I really felt blocked in. So
Yeah.
now I'm kind of coming back to full circle. It's weird doing this podcast, like talking to you and then her, like just years
Yeah.
later, and how far
Yeah.
I've come too. But just like she was
Yeah.
my inspiration to get me going.
Nice.
So we're gonna be talking about like PTSD and trauma, which
Yeah.
I relate
It,
to, and I feel like you do
mhm.
too. That's why I'm bringing it up.
Mhm. Yeah.
What? So
Yeah, I
what?
do. I actually had a few people, when I was teaching out of Good Life Tantallon, there was a gentleman and actually a couple of gentlemen that had PTSD from the war who came, and like yoga was their way of like treating their PTSD.
Mhm.
And yeah, um, no, it can be it's a very powerful healing tool.
But specifically, I'm getting this feeling because I wanted to kind of share a bit more about your story, because I feel like
Yeah,
you've been through like so much, and like I'm just, throwing
yeah,
my PTSD and trauma around like, oh yeah, this happened. I don't really, talk about that myself, because I think as a
yeah,
teacher sometimes we tend to focus so much on other people that we forget to kind of share our own stories and like what brought us to everything in the first place.
yeah.
But I feel like this
I
is an
had
opportunity, right?
Yeah, I had a lot of like trauma in my childhood. Um, just like just growing up like in my home, like not necessarily like directed at me, but like just like between my parents, like it was like a very volatile, could be a very volatile, still is sort of, um there can be a lot of like volatile energy there between the two of them. They're still married, they still like live
Mhm.
together
And they're not
and
watching.
whatnot.
And they're not watching this.
They're not watching this, no. I probably won't share it for that reason.
Okay, and it's all
um
good.
yeah, and um it's sort of like there was a lot of I didn't learn how to regulate my emotions from a very young age. And like by the time that you sort of like come into your own as a person, as like an adolescent, and you're sort of like expected to be able to do that, like I was never really able to do. And I didn't know that at the time. And that's something that I learned through yoga teacher training, was how to regulate my emotions. I didn't even know that that was something that I was like deficient in, or something that people do. Like I was very much that person that was like reactive and would be like, you know, I was in a long-term relationship with someone from a very young age. Like we dated, like he lived down the street, and we started dating when we were like 14 until 21. And then that ended up becoming like a very traumatic situation as well, like mentally and physically abusive. I as a child as well, uh I'm gonna say like around maybe junior high, as I developed a really bad eating disorder, which persisted throughout my life and didn't really fully come into like a full recovery until I was about 26. So like I had like a very serious, severe eating disorder for like over 10 years. And it's still something that like in the back of my mind and like through my like yoga and healing work, that
Of
like I
course.
still am like healing, and like I still like, and I also became like addicted to drugs and alcohol
Mhm.
after, I guess, like in my adolescence and like early adulthood as well. And that's something that I actively treat. So like I've had a lot of addiction, and it all stemmed from trauma that I had or experienced in my life.
So
And then
I just want to stop you for a sec. Sorry. So when you say like trauma, was that like what you felt like as a child being exposed to, like with your parents not having like that healthy relationship, and like that was your environment?
it started out as my environment, yeah, like family type stuff, and
Yeah.
then it sort of like graduated like when I got into that relationship, and
Okay.
as that relationship sort of like developed, like
Okay.
there was a lot of like traumatic experiences that
Mm-hmm.
sort of like happened with that, and then when I sort of developed like a full blown like addiction to drugs and alcohol, and I would start like putting myself in like really dangerous situations, and then was like
Yeah.
exposed and encountered a lot of like sexual trauma
Yeah.
over a number of years, and was like sexually assaulted a number of times.
Okay. And I'm sorry.
um
Sorry to hear that, but actually so same trauma as me.
yeah,
That's making me feel so emotional. So let's do some,
yeah,
if you're okay with it, can I do some clearings for you around it
yeah, for
with
sure,
together?
yeah.
And so if other people are watching, it seems to be so far, like I've had 2 theta healers on, and that's what I typically gravitate towards now in my sessions. So I'm like,
Sure,
why not do a little healing? Hey, Robin's
that'd
healing.
be great.
And I don't know, we have a full moon tomorrow as well. So
Yeah,
I just feel that there's everybody right now is feeling a lot of emotions. So it's not,
yes.
yes, we're helping each other right now, but I just get that anybody watches this is supposed to be watching it because
Hmm.
they probably relate to this. And Marseille is saying hi with her perky, chirpy energy.
Hello, Marseille.
She's awesome. She is also going to be on my podcast, and she's a counselor among many other things. She's another tool junkie. So she probably popped on at the right time. So would you like to let go? And this is just theta healing is just acknowledging that you would like to release something, because everything that presents itself like is coming up for a reason, but it's also like sometimes it needs to come up in order to go out. That's the way I see it.
Yes.
So why not just support each other? So would you like to let go
Hmm.
of all that past trauma? And anyone else that's watching, Marseille says, I love it.
I would love to let go of all the past trauma.
Yeah, especially with the full moon, it's in Libra, it's all about balance. So I feel like we really need to because we want to balance our health, we want to balance our weight all the time, right? Things like
Hmm.
that. Balance our marriage or our, family relationship. So let's let go of all the sticky, icky stuff that's already come up between you and I, and anyone else that since we started this practice or podcast, um, anyone else that's had some weird lingering energy that's kind of bouncing in and out. That's what I'm getting, like wanting to start yoga, not sure, any type of resistance towards actually getting better and actually getting healthy, even though you say you want to. And let's replace that with trusting that it's okay to let go of things when the time is right, and that when things present itself to you, when you're being shown information or you're being shown emotions that need to be released, you want to trust that you're worthy of actually letting go and actually releasing and actually doing the healthy things that you say you want to do. And if so, all you have to do is say yes. And then you just take a really deep breath. Good. And I'm getting like gratitude is coming up, because we want to be thankful for our story as well, right? Like if we can say thank you every single day for all the horrible things that have happened to us that have taken us to where we are, I feel like that's really supportive. Do you agree?
1,000%. I do that.
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah. Oh yeah. I wouldn't be here and who I am now without like all of it before. Like I don't hold any resentments in my heart towards anything or anyone or any situation, as even as bad as it was. Like it's taught me something. Everything's an opportunity. That's how I look at it. That's what I tell myself now. Like if something, you know, that we would typically label or judge as like a bad occurrence happens, like now I literally will tell myself, like I'll say it out loud, like this is an opportunity. So
I love that. So like your journey, it sounds like everything kind of like brought you to like something else, right? So like you had that horrible relationship and now you're married, right?
yeah, it wasn't like I wouldn't like it ended up horrible. It didn't like
Start that
I
way.
didn't like it's nothing against him. Like I don't know. Like it's hard to describe. It ended up very, very traumatic and toxic at the end, but like
Yep.
I don't blame them, if that makes
Yep.
sense.
But it probably taught you like the lessons from that probably taught you about your healthy boundaries now.
Yes,
Would you say
for
like
sure.
in your relationships, probably with your family, probably with your husband? Your
Yeah, I've had to put a lot of like boundaries in place like with my family over the years, and that's actually something that I learned from yoga as well. The boundaries with my family.
Yep.
Um yeah, in order to and just like know like when to walk away or like when it's time like when the visit's over or you know just certain things behaviors or things that like I won't engage with like I know what my boundaries are now before a big issue and probably in that first relationship was that there were no boundaries whatsoever
Yep.
and that's something that sort of is like part of my family's problems and like there's four of us in my immediate family, my sister, my mom, and my dad. And like, unfortunately, I'm really the only one that's pursued any kind of form of like real healing. So there's still a lot there, like in the family to unpack.
Yep.
And one of the biggest issues is like a lack of boundaries. Like there are no boundaries there whatsoever
Right.
to speak of.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's one that we never stop learning either, right? Like it's like
yeah.
boundaries. It's because I have a coach right now who helps me in not just business but in personal, and I'm like loving the fact that she's always there, I guess, for me because
Yes.
she's gone through so many that she's going to be on the podcast too. Geez, I've got lots of stuff going on. But her name's Laura McPhee, and she's just such a gentle soul. And so she talks about boundaries and how we're always like boundary level 1, boundary level 2, boundary 1 million. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
I think we can get really hard on ourselves and it's like, oh, I haven't aced this yet, you know, my boundaries should be better. But it's like you never have to like you'll always keep up leveling them, you know, like you'll always be shown the
Yes.
next step. Do you find?
Yes, yes. And I definitely feel like as like throughout um like my relationship with my husband now, like if I do look at like the history of like my own boundaries there, like I've definitely kind of come into a place where like I'm not afraid to like use my voice and like speak up for the most part and
Yeah.
like not just like be a doormat and like people pleaser
Yep. Oh yeah.
because that was an issue as well for me
Yes.
and now it doesn't like there's little things that don't need to like be like a big deal because you can just say like no I'm not up for that or whatever whereas before like I would have just kind of been like went along with it but then kind of like grew resentment about it
Yes. Yeah. And I think that
so
women in particular struggle with that a lot more than men, do you
mhm,
think?
mhm.
And I
I
was
do.
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I do, and I feel like I can't speak for everyone, but, like, sometimes men will say that they, like, don't want you to do that, but then they will challenge you when you set a boundary sometimes.
Hmm.
they want you to do it, and then you lay your boundary, and then they will challenge it, and in your mind you're just like, you would you would like, I am so the person, like, I don't like, I don't, I'm not a private person by any means, but I am a very, like, respectful person of
Yes.
other people's boundaries, to the point where, like, even if I'm having a conversation with, like, a best friend, like, I don't pry, or I can, like, tell when someone is holding something back, like, for a reason. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yes, and that goes back
Like,
to that goes back to the trauma too, because you can kind of like
yeah,
sense where you're extra
yes,
sensitive. You have your trauma has created this sixth sense in you that
yeah,
can actually sniff out other people's shit.
mhm. Yeah, and I have a lot of people in my life who are, like, priors and, like, very curious, and, like 21 questions, like, almost like I have family members who are, like, should be professional interrogators, and that's just, like, how they, like, lead conversations and, like, lead through life in that way,
Yeah.
and I find it like, in my mind, I'm like, "How are you so, like, forward and, like,
Aggressive, maybe.
brash with aggressive, and people are giving you these signs of, like, they don't want to go there, or they don't want to
Right.
talk about this, or, like, they're trying to be private, like, they're hinting at the fact that, like, this is an information that, like, I want to disclose,
Place and
and
time.
there's, like,
Mhm.
place and time, but there's no discretion in them being able to, like, read, like, oh, I'm going to step away from that now, like, if someone, I can sense if someone doesn't want to talk about something, or, like, I might still be curious about it, but I can tell when to, like, not ask and, like, not push it, and just, like,
Right.
respectfully bow out. Like, I don't need to know everything. Like, I'm so okay with, like, the vast unknown. Like, I'm not one of those people that's like, I need to know. Like, I like a little bit of mystery. So, like, if someone's like, I'm getting those vibes, like, I'm not gonna
Yeah.
push anyone into telling me anything.
So it sounds what I've been attracting are people like psychics actually. So like that's a weird word for a lot of people because I think they
Mhm.
attach psychics to like what we used to see as a psychic with like a crystal
Mhm.
ball and a gypsy thing. But I
Mhm.
think more and more people, because we've been going through so much in the world, like there's like
Yeah.
major shifts happening. And I feel like more and more people
Mhm.
are waking up, and
Yeah.
like you probably see that in your practices that you do with others and friends or whatnot. But I feel like people are way more psychic than they realize. And I kind of get that
Yes.
you are that way from your like kind of
Yeah.
experiences that your trauma turned into more of a psychic gift.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm sort of like still kind of coming into that like side of everything. It's something that I've like felt called to for like years, or like maybe like wanted to be, or thought like could be there. And like I am realizing now that like it is there, and like I just need to like trust my intuition, and I feel like I do that now.
Good.
When you came to my apartment years ago to do my teacher training, or Reiki training,
Yes.
there was, you wanted me to like close my eyes and meditate for a second, and then like write down like whatever image like pops into your head, and like I couldn't trust
Yeah.
like what I was like seeing or feeling. Like I wanted you to tell me, like I wasn't at the
Right.
point where like I could see for myself, and now like I'll get signs or whatever, like whether it be like feelings or images or just like a sense of like knowing, and like I trust it now, and like I can like read it. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like I trust the signs, I see
Yes.
them, and I can sort of like intuitively, like, it doesn't take me a second to like need to like decipher it. I'm just like instantly, like, I'm just like, yeah, that's it. Like,
Yeah.
I trust myself. I like to be guided, I guess, or
Yes.
like I trust my own,
Intuition.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
that's
for
kind of
sure.
it's I didn't know where this conversation was gonna end up going from the beginning, and that's what I love about it. But I feel like people get what they need to hear, and I think that's part of like if you're getting the intuitive hint or nudge or message to start doing yoga, right?
Yeah.
Just even that feeling of like watching this, I feel like every single person that watches this that isn't doing yoga is going to start doing yoga because they're attracted to the conversation, if that makes sense. So it's just like, I feel like you're inspiring people to start really just trusting like those signs a bit more. Do you agree?
Definitely.
And if you've had trauma, then chances are you're extra intuitive and extra sensitive, and maybe you've been hesitant because maybe the classes that you know were around your town or something like that would actually maybe trigger you more than heal you, because there might be other people in that class that are also experiencing trauma and it might be too much for you.
Yeah, definitely.
For some people, other people need that community, but some people really just need to like really just connect with their own energy. So do you do any type of like yoga classes online or where people can do their own practice from home?
That's something that I'm like looking to actually possibly start up. It's, so for the past 2 years I've been in nursing school, and it is like basically like 4 years of nursing school like jammed into 2 years, the accelerated program. So my life has literally been like just an absolute shit show of busyness. Like there hasn't been like a waking moment. Like I actually had to step away from teaching for the most part, like to get through this program, because I just like couldn't I couldn't give anymore. So this is winding down. I just have like a final placement to do between May and the end of July. And after that, like I'm done nursing school. And as soon as I'm done, the first thing that I want to do is start teaching yoga again, like get back into teaching. And I've been thinking about maybe bringing it online.
Well, when you have time, the other thing too is we could do like a Zoom combined like
Great. I'd
class
love that.
by like donation or something like that. So it's like a karma class if you're up for it, because I could use like somebody else, I feel like, to motivate me as well, and vice versa. So like I could bring in some of the healing side to it, and like you could maybe bring in some of the structure. But I'm just thinking like even a 40-minute class for people after, because they've watched this and maybe that's like they might feel safe with us. And like sometimes money is an issue for people. So it's like as long as there's like $1 or $5 or something, so that there's like an exchange. But I feel like that would be cool. So when you actually have the time carved out, I think that would be a really cool thing for anyone.
I'm good now. Like I'm just going to be working now from like my regular or whatever, like my nursing rotation until the end of July. So like I will actually like have days off now.
Wonderful. So yes, I think that we should do that.
Yeah, me too. Count me in.
Cool. So that's what we'll set up. Why don't you, if you're okay with it, in the comments, like after this, you can just put all the information that you have. Like if there's anything, I don't know, that like you might not have a website, but just like, I don't know, if people want to add you on Facebook or something like that, however you choose to share your info. You're just no stress. I love that name. And I just want to make sure that people, I know they can't see you right now, but just like get a little familiar with you, because maybe they're around the area, and when you are back up and doing classes, or if you end up doing like a retreat or something like that, whatever, people might gravitate more towards you, right? So we'll put all that info in the comments. And was there any other last things that you wanted to say for inspiration or motivation? Like to bring more joy into people's lives with yoga, so yoga doesn't feel so heavy for them. Like how can they do it with more joy and ease? No pressure.
I'm not sure.
I feel
just let go. Like just don't take it so seriously.
Yeah.
I guess. Like, that's what I tell myself. Sometimes, like, when I go to my mat and I set an intention, I'm like, you're not going to take this seriously. Like, don't take this seriously. Or I'll remind myself before I start, it's like, if you fall out of the pose, we're going to laugh about it.
Yes.
Like, or I'll, like, sometimes I'll just like cue myself. Cause like in yoga, you're always like cueing stuff, right? Like, relax your shoulders, ground your feet, like bring your navel in. And sometimes I'll cue like turn the corners of your mouth up, as in like smile. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. I've been kind of working on like naming my podcasts like after they happen. So I'm gonna name this one Smile.
Perfect.
I like that. So thank you so much for coming on, and I'm looking forward to doing now like an activity with you. And
Yes.
I hope that the energy that you received today integrates and you have an amazing Easter. And everyone else that's watching, thank you so much for taking the time and liking the podcast. How do you like my How do you like my podcast voice? Thank you.
I love it.
Cool. All right. So we'll
talk to you so much, Robin.
You're welcome. We'll talk to you later, alligator.
Later, alligator.
Bye.
Bye.